Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. I recently came across this quick passage from the American political analyst and politician Pat Buchanan. He wrote this in 2008, and almost 20 years on, you can see how powerful his words are, how prescient he was. Quote, "All about us we can see clearly now that the West is passing away. In a single century, all the great houses of continental Europe fell. All the empires that ruled the world have vanished. Not one European nation, save Muslim Albania, has a birth rate that will enable it to survive through the century. As a share of world population, peoples of European ancestry have been shrinking for 3 generations. The character of every Western nation is being irredeemably altered as each undergoes an unresisted invasion from the Third World. We are slowly disappearing from the earth. Having lost the will to rule, Western man seems to be losing the will to live as a unique civilization as he feverishly indulges in la dolce vita," that's the good life in Italian, "with a yawning indifference as to who might inherit the earth he once ruled." Strong words from Buchanan, but I think one of the reasons they zing so strongly is because he gets to the heart of that shift that occurred in Western man. Gone nowadays is his desire to wonder, to create, to step out into the world and to build. And with that lack, his civilization has fallen apart around him. Buchanan describes it as la dolce vita, a nice phrase, as I say, the good life in Italian. That essentially means pleasure, or what I would call the pursuit of modernist materialism. The only problem with that is there's no real transcendent meaning or mission in it, but it is very intoxicating. This is why so many men in this day and age are lost in the pursuit of ephemeral worldly pleasures. And when they realize they won't work, they can be pacified by media algorithms, the news, utopian ideologies, TV. The ideologies are especially bad, actually, because in truth they're sort of counterfeit versions of sacred order that man really craves. In essence, the West is in something of a spiritual battle, but I don't think we've quite realised that. We've certainly not gotten a political manifestation for this dimension yet either. However, I do think people feel it on a subconscious level, and it stands behind a lot of what we're experiencing right now. On the one side, you have globalist liberalism with its utopian modernist promises of a new world beyond identity, but the more it goes on, the worse things seem to get, the more dangerous and degenerate things seem to be falling to. On the flip side, you can sense there is this return of things like nation, people turning back to tradition, people who were once strong new atheists, very critical of Christianity, starting to explore the church. I think this same energy lays beneath the recent Unite the Kingdom march that went through London, organised by Tommy Robinson. Now, the police stated 150,000 attended. Robinson and other organisers and attendees say there are a lot more there. It's hard to tell with these things exactly how many, but it's clear it was massive. And I know many people have uncertainties around Robinson himself, whether they think he's containment and, too close to the Zionist cause and all this sort of stuff. But aside from all of that, it's not easy to get that many people out on the street. And it goes to show that there is something bubbling beneath. People feel very strongly that the country is losing its way, that their roots are being ripped up. Now, it does seem that the present energy has had a knock-on effect with regards to reform. And Nigel Farage, he's come out now and said that reform will scrap indefinite leave to remain, and of course this places more people at risk of deportation. That's obviously playing to the right and the energy that's being manifested there. Now, I'm not a true believer in reform at all. I don't really trust Farage. I think he's quite canny, and he's watching for the public mood and trying to sound the notes which the mass of the public agree with, and then lead on that note. And I think his aim is that will take him into number 10. I think he'd be better than Keir Starmer, don't get me wrong. I mean, at least he might be able to speak a bit more freely under reform, but fundamentally it's not going to change the system. However, the key point is that Nigel Farage is actually willing to make these statements, which in itself is a sign that the neoliberal order is now starting to crack. And again, I think this is because many people are realising if we continue down this road, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for Britain, for Europe, for the Western world. So you're going to have to start thinking differently and doing something different. And of course, Farage gesturing towards things such as deportation speaks to that. And as you might imagine, the lovey-dovey London Liberals do not know how to handle this. Here's Andrew Marr getting a bit irate on the radio about Farage's announcement.
For now, I just want you to imagine hundreds of thousands of people who've been living here peaceably and quietly, working away, being arrested and forcibly expelled from this country. I want you to think about the businesses instantly shuttered, all the places where experienced people suddenly vanish, their homes emptied, the childhood friendship groups broken up, the neighbours up in arms. I want to ask, where does this end? Is it too much to say blood on the streets?
Now, the first thing to say about someone like Andrew Marr is he is a representative of the sheltered, detached London liberal elite with their utopian worldview. They don't really experience reality like the rest of us do. And that's why, you have to remember when Keir Starmer came in, he predicted that Britain would be an island of peace and stability, which goes to show, how in touch these people are. They live in a fantasy world. And we have to remember as well, they're doing the classic liberal moral manipulation here of, don't go against our policies, it's going to be blood on the streets. Without realising, blood are already on the streets, Andrew, because of your neoliberal project. Remember the Welsh choir boy? Maybe you've forgotten him. We haven't forgotten. That was absolutely savage and brutal, and something like that should never happen in our country again. On top of that, what about the grooming gangs? Do you care about those people? Don't think you do you? But this is how they think. We must remember they have a utopian liberal ideology which makes them think they're morally superior to you. They believe their utopian ideology is how reality should be. And even though it isn't, if you challenge that, you will be seen as evil. That's pretty standard across the board and across our politics, as ex-leader of the Lib Dems Tim Farron was showing recently at the Lib Dem conference.
How dare the nationalists steal our flags? How dare they steal what it is to be British, English, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, Cornish? How dare they? How dare they?
Bit of a weird take there from Tim, if you ask me. What does he expect nationalists to do? The clue's in the name. They're going to wave the national flag. But more importantly, he exhibits this liberal way of thinking that year zero is 1997 when Tony Blair came to power and began his cultural revolution. What he doesn't see is it's the liberals that stole the notion of what it meant to be British. Before that, it had been settled for a long, long time. We had our tradition, we had the constituent countries within there, and we had a very settled homogenous group. So when the Lib Dems at their recent conference tried to take back the British flag, you have to ask, what are they taking it back to? Whether you agree with the nationalists or not, at least they have a coherent worldview. The British flag is representative of Britain and the British people. For the Lib Dems, I don't quite know what it means. I would assume tolerance, diversity and inclusion. Jerry Halliwell, Spice Girls, I don't really know. Cool Britannia. It all seems very flimsy. But hey-ho, don't take it from me. Let's go straight to the horse's mouth, given the Lib Dems are the true representatives of British identity, and see what it means to be a Lib Dem.
What's the point of the Lib Dems?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Gosh, tricky question. Belief in democracy, equality, inclusion.
We believe in freedom. We all believe in civil liberties.
One of the things that I love about the Lib Dems that I really stand for is their values around caring.
There's no way we're going to say immigrants aren't welcome. Yes, you are. Be it on religious grounds or ethnic grounds, aren't welcome. Yes, you are.
The Lib Dems stand for doing the right thing, not trying to get crazy about foreigners coming into this country.
Black, brown, white, whatever, as long as you're a liberal, we're happy to have you. And it's most of the country is centrist, most of the country is liberal, so yeah, we're a party for everyone.
I'm very worried about form and their right-wing values, and they seem to be feeding off, making people afraid.
We are the antidote to the Reform Party.
Reform thrive on people being angry and wanting something to change and railing against the system, and I think with what we stand for as, being a party that listens to people and actually deals with things and solves problems.
The way that the Lib Dems come across to the people is very personable. For people going, right, who am I going to elect in the next general election? If you contrast that with people like Nigel Farage, I think that makes it very clear who you're going to vote for.
I'd like to say that we're nice, but we can also be hard as well. We like to stick up for injustice.
You can be proud to be British, you can be proud to be patriot, but not to divide through nationalism.
So from what I can gather, being a Lib Dem, which according to them means to be truly British as well, seems to carry echoes of being a woke social justice ideologue, having smatterings of civic liberalism, having a huge dollop of liberal regime propaganda, and then calling your opponents, who, note by the way, are all on the right, not the left, evil, angry and, quote, fearful. What a fresh, exciting new political dynamic. Nobody's tried this before. I mean, what is the difference between the Lib Dems and the Labour Party? It would seem to me that the only difference is the Lib Dems are probably more suitable for the upper middle class ageing hippie mum types who had a rich conservative voting husband, so they've got plenty of money in the bank, but now spend their time making various items out of hemp to sell in their online store. The reality is these sorts of people tend to live in their all-white enclaves in some village in the home counties. They're not affected by these brutal questions of identity that many people are at this point, and that's what it all comes down to eventually. Politics at the moment will shift on that line of, do you want to maintain your identity or do you want to lose it? Do you think it's utterly meaningless? And the liberal left are fully aware of this as well. It's why leftist outlets such as Politics Joe bring on thinkers like Yuval Noah Harari to try and deconstruct the nature of Englishness as a big gotcha for the evil right wing.
All human groups on Earth actually are the result of the intermingling and interbreeding of groups which previously saw themselves as separate and even hostile. Like you look at the British people, so you go back in history, you have Scots and Welsh and English, and you look at the English and you go back in time, so you have, the Anglo-Saxons invaders who come in the 5th and 6th century. They were not one people. There were Utes and Angles and Saxons, and they did not establish one kingdom. They established many kingdoms and chieftains. It took centuries of conflicts. People in different kingdoms and different tribes hated each other, massacred each other. It took a very long time to create a single people out of that.
I don't know why this has been circulating as some big gotcha, because I don't know anybody who didn't know that the Anglo-Saxons weren't one homogenous group. However, they were relatively similar northwestern European groups that have made up the modern English identity. And of course, everybody's completely culturally assimilated over centuries. In fact, you could even argue that Harari is accidentally arguing the counter case by stating it took centuries for the differing groups in England to settle their differences and become one people. Again, with this modern multiculturalism where we're all just rammed in together in the interests of capital and called evil if we notice anything wrong with it, it seems to me that while multiculturalism has been something of a disaster, it could have gone a lot worse. But we've seen these things 100 times before. A deconstruction of the English identity by pointing out the different groups that came here over centuries and the challenges that led to, as if that's a precursor to accept modern mass migration that's making us a minority in our own country in a matter of decades. Of course, as well, for those of you wondering, yes, Harari is Israeli, and yes, as far as I understand, he's a Zionist, so one rule for him, another one for you. But where do we go with all of this? What can be done? As I've said many times, I don't believe much can change at the ballot box because the globalist liberal system really controls all of the levers of power at this point, especially money power. So what I've started to think in recent weeks and months is this idea of the true king. The time will create the man. And I use that symbolically speaking most of the time. But as I was going to bed last night, I started to think, what about if we did actually have a new king? Now, I know it sounds a bit crazy at first, but just hear me out. We all know that Charles is a mouthpiece for globalist liberalism. He doesn't seem to have any affinity with the British people. He certainly doesn't seem to have any affinity with Christianity. He seems to be as loyal to Islam as he is to Christianity. And he, the truth is, like his mother, has never mentioned anything about our increasing demographic replacement. It's very rare these days that we stop and consider what a king is actually supposed to be. A king is supposed to be a quasi-divine figure, the living manifestation of a people and the sacred order they abide by. The clue is in our national anthem, God Save the King. Therein we immediately have the path of the transcendent in God and sacred hierarchy in the king who rules over us. Through the Evolian frame, we can understand the king not just as a political ruler, but more the, quote, living centre, the one who links heaven and earth, around whom the order of the world is aligned. Yet today we are living through a degenerated version of our monarchy. It's been gutted out. It's a mockery of what it truly should be, and it's being used by crude material revolutionary ideologies of the age to push forth their own mandate. Charles being a mouthpiece for globalist liberalism is made all the more bizarre because those very people are anti-monarchy. It's completely counter to their worldview, so by playing to them you're only going to undermine your own position. But I'm just not sure Charles thinks that far forward. And for those of us more drawn to the traditional worldview and the dimensions of sacred order, at what point do we say this king is completely failing in what is supposed to be his sacred role? If anything, he's actively working against it and working against us. Now, I'm not talking here about Charles retiring and William taking the throne. I mean, look, William sounds like a nice guy, Kate seems very elegant and all that, they seem like nice people, but let's be honest, Will is a little bit Gareth Southgate about everything, isn't he? I mean, he's politically correct down the very centre, and I don't think the general direction of travel that his father and grandmother created with regards to the future of Britain is going to change under his kingship. Now, given I do believe that Britain will enter a period of balkanisation before it can really be reborn, if we're not already there, we will see a collapse of our institutions, in my view. There will be a collapse of our political structures. Things will start to shift and change. And at that time, you do wonder whether we could say, is it time for a new monarchy? To be honest, I have no idea how these things could work at all, whether there could be a public vote of no confidence in the monarchy, whether that could be passed through Parliament. I'm not quite sure. However, I do think with the way things are going anyway, that the monarchy is going to become increasingly irrelevant as it tries to play to the world more and more, and as the country gets more and more chaotic. It may seem absurd to some international viewers, but I have to say this because we're ruled by a bunch of psychopathic liberal ideologues. I'm not calling for any violence here or any violent movements to depose the king. I know it seems crazy, but the powers that be will work on absolutely anything they can in this day and age. All I'm saying in this video is that if it can be done, it should be done lawfully and peacefully. But I have to say, in this era of chaos and corrosion, the idea of a king who actually stands for his people, who represents tradition and transcendence, sacred order, cares about his country and wishes to see it move forward, is a symbolic leader throughout time, is actually very appealing to me. I don't know if this is something that could be explored more in the future. I guess we'll have to think about it. Anyway, do let me know your thoughts about all this down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. You can join the Substack if you wish, and also there's a sister channel about spiritual and personal development too. Enjoy the rest of your day.